I'm just gonna keep yawning.
Yeah? All right.
Yeah.
I just pushed the live stream, so we're now live and
Cool.
streaming. Yeah. Guido, Sylvan, Helga, let me know if you're having any problems being moderators today.
That was a thing yesterday.
They were saying that they were having some problems, that they weren't seeing the moderation ability, but Susie was in there and she was moderating like crazy, so.
So I see the little wrench on their
Yeah.
names. So
Yeah.
hopefully things are well.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. Um, just before the show, I was mentioning to Pamela that she absolutely has to see Rick and Morty, that she has not watched Rick and Morty. She didn't even know what Rick and Morty was.
I knew what it was, sort
Okay.
of. I knew
All
it was a
right.
cartoon.
So at this point, the chat should explode and encourage you to watch Rick and Morty on Hulu or wherever fine animated television shows are available. So we're gonna do our second of. I'm gonna say hello to some people. That's right. Hello to Astronomy Cast. That's us, though. It's very referential. Carolyn B, Giselle Sabrin, Guido Bieber, Helga Bjorkog, John Suffield, Larry Beckham, Mike Billing, Sylvan Westby, Stein Fulleras, Tech Tang, Tom Van Scotter, and Valdegast. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
So we're gonna do. We're doing the second today of our little mini trilogy. Although who knows how long this series on Mars will go on for. Nobody has any idea what Rick and Morty is. I take it all back. You all should watch Rick and Morty. It's the greatest show.
I'm glad I'm not the only.
The only one.
Yeah.
Come on, somebody tell me, agree with me that it's the best. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna do our second episode of Mars. Are you just gonna keep yawning? Is it bedtime?
No,
I'm
my
sorry.
phone exploded early this morning, and some unknown phone number called me like 10 times in a row until I finally turned off my phone.
Yeah, put on the do not disturb. Do they have that on Apple?
Yeah.
Apologize, my dog is drinking in the background here. Yeah, okay, cool. And then, of course, we'll stick around, answer some of your questions about space and astronomy, and then Pamela will get to have a nap, maybe.
I'm actually cleaning my house today. This is my goal.
I love this. Valdegast says, why didn't you title this Dying on Mars?
Well, we're trying to be slightly hopeful. Slightly.
Oh, no way. I'm not pulling any punches. Mars is where you're going to go to die. All right. Well, I'm ready to record if you're ready to record.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm pressing record and it gave me an error. Why does it hate me so much? Okay, let me restart Audacity. Sigh.
Let me see if my hotkeys are working. They never work.
Okay. Why does that seem to confuse you? Things are
You.
actually working.
Us. You in a browser. Browser. Yeah, okay. Works.
Okay. I'm ready to press record again. Shall we try again?
I'm ready.
Okay. I'm pressing record. It's recording.
Also
okay.
recording here. Oh, oops. Okay.
We're sorry, Chad.
Nope, here we go. I'm not sorry. Chad can handle this. He's up for it. Astronomy Cast, episode 429, Living on Mars. Welcome to Astronomy Cast, our weekly fact-based journey through the cosmos, where we help you understand not only what we know, but how we know what we know. My name is Fraser Cain. I'm the publisher of Universe Today, and with me is Dr. Pamela Kay, the director of CosmoQuest. Hey, Pamela, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Fraser?
Good. Another episode to continue our mini-series on the Red Planet. Who knows how many episodes we will do until we get bored of it. And sometimes I can get bored of things very quickly, and other times I can just be entertained for years. So,
but it's Mars.
It's Mars. Mars is awesome. Were there any more announcements?
So I think this will come out before I am in San Francisco. So on September, I believe it's the 14th, if that's a Wednesday, there is a meetup scheduled in San Francisco at Rosa Mondays in the Mission District. It's for CosmoQuest Astronomy Cast. It's listed on universe.com. So if you go to universe.com and search on CosmoQuest and San Francisco, it will pull up. And it's a great place with craft beer and sausage and big wooden tables we can sit around and talk science at.
That sounds great. Sorry, I won't be there.
We'll miss you.
All right. So when Elon Musk announced plans to send humans to Mars, he conveniently left out one important aspect. How are we supposed to survive on a place this hostile to life? Seriously, Mars sucks, and it's going to take some impressive techniques and technologies to make it on the red planet. I'm not sure you're aware of this, Pamela. Mars is just awful.
Yeah, well, the whole universe is trying to kill us. So, yeah, I think it's one of these things where Mars, it's more hostile than Earth. No atmosphere, no magnetosphere, but given the grand scheme of deadliness of our entire universe, it's not that bad.
So Mars is just mostly awful as opposed to a death zone. No, it's still a death zone. No, I think it's as opposed to like instantaneously lethal.
It's a slow death zone as opposed to an instant death zone.
Right, okay. All right, so before we kind of get into how we're going to actually survive on Mars, let's sort of set the stage and just talk about how awful Mars is.
So, first of all, it's cold enough that like dry ice freezes out of the atmosphere.
Yeah, we mentioned this in last week's episode that it snows carbon dioxide in the wintertime.
So it does occasionally get up above freezing for water, but that's only occasionally, only at special latitudes. But given the fact that there's such low air pressure, any water that happened to be around would essentially boil off instantly.
Okay, so hold on. We're just going to keep a list here somewhere. So the temperatures they go from really cold to so cold, carbon dioxide freezes right out of the air and falls like snow. And you don't want that. That's
that
bad.
Would be fairly accurate.
All right. The air pressure, 1% the thickness of Earth air pressure. So if you tried to breathe it, you couldn't because you couldn't keep the air pressure in your lungs. And it's carbon dioxide, which is no good.
And so you're talking, if you have exposed skin, it pretty much instantly bruises. Not as instantly as in outer space, but fast enough that you're still hating everything.
Right, but if you were dropped out onto the surface of Mars, all the air would go out of your lungs pretty much instantaneously, explode them if you hadn't sort of breathed out before you stepped out onto the surface of Mars.
You'd get the bends.
You get the you get the bends, and you would fall unconscious within 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and then die.
You have longer than that. It's actually one of these things where if you hyperventilate yourself to over-oxygenate your blood, completely exhale, and make a mad dash, and you happen to be in an equatorial latitude, so it's not too bad, you got until you run out of oxygen in your blood.
Right.
So it's as long as you can hold your breath underwater, basically.
Well, no, because you can't hold your breath, right? So the air's all out of your lungs. You've only got the air that's in your
bloodstream.
In your bloodstream, yeah.
But if you think about it, if you're trying to sink yourself under the water, a lot of times people will exhale when you're stupid little kids trying to stay underwater as long as you can. So we're the stupid little kid staying underwater, not the adult with a lung full of air underwater.
Okay.
Basically, you're good until your body's like, I must inhale, and you inhale essentially nothing.
Okay. So low air, cold temperatures, and then like a little slower than that, nasty radiation.
Yeah. So here on Earth, we have a thick atmosphere that protects us from extreme ultraviolet to everything more deadly than that. And everything with a shorter wavelength than ultraviolet is more deadly than ultraviolet. So we go from just you're going to get skin cancer to your DNA is destroyed now. It's not as bad as being like in the open space between Mars and Earth, but it's still going to kill you given time and
Right.
cancer.
Yeah. Now, and we'll talk about ways that you can mitigate this, but in general, if you're out on the surface of Mars for long periods of time, you're going to accumulate a lot of radiation. And if there's big solar storms, you're not going to enjoy your time out there.
Yes.
Bad radiation, and then low gravity, which sounds like fun, but it's actually going to be a total pain.
Yeah, because low gravity, we're still fully coming to terms with all of the effects, but it definitely causes decalcification of your bones. And it seems to muck with a whole bunch of other different bodily things, such that if you don't constantly exercise, you end up with muscle atrophy, and it's just bad news. So we know that the zero gravity ish of being on the International Space Station has consequences. You have to exercise a lot.
And you're dying while it's happening. Like you exercise a lot, but you're still dying in space, in microgravity, right? Your body is wasting away. You're putting it off, but you are not preventing the destruction that's happening to your body by being in microgravity.
And so we're not yet sure just how bad being on Mars will be, since there is gravity and you have more room to wander, but nonetheless, bad for you. Bad. Death.
Yeah, we have no idea still. Like, we know microgravity is death. We know that Earth gravity is fine, and we don't know where the dividing line is between those two numbers. At 38% the force of gravity on Mars, it could be lethal over longer periods of time, maybe a couple of years. We don't know if children can be gestated properly and born into that environment. These are still unknowns right now. More experiments required.
And there's experiments that they do up on the space station looking at how plants are affected, how animals born in space and gestated in space are affected. But I mean, at the end of the day, human beings are not rats, and the experiments we do with mice and invertebrates and other critters, a zebra danio isn't going to totally reproduce the effects that a human being is going to have.
Yep. So low temperature, low air pressure, bad radiation, bad gravity. So these are really, and then we've got a few, like just a collection of things, like the day's a little longer.
That one I don't think will try and kill you.
Yeah.
And I'm good with days being slightly longer.
Soil's made of poison.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wash it. No, you just wash it.
Well, I mean, it's basically a giant Superfund site. So,
whole planet. Yeah.
Whole planet. So if you think about all the stuff that has to take place to clear up a Superfund site, to clean the dirt, test the dirt, clean the dirt some more, test the dirt. How deep do you have to dig? How deep do you have to clean? Yeah. And it's death. I'm just going to keep saying that this episode.
Yeah, it's death. Okay, so I think we've set the stage here that, you know, if you want a place that's 1,000 times easier to live at, go on and head to Antarctica. Set up, feel free to, set up your tent on Antarctica, and you are living in an absolute tropical paradise compared to Mars. But the adventure of colonizing another planet is pretty exciting. So what can we do to compensate and deal with all of these issues?
So one of the things that deeply amuses me is at the end of the day, it all seems to come down to fish tanks and tilapia. So we would need to have a steady food source that is diverse. We would need to have oxygenation, all of those sorts of things going on. And so you need a system that can produce in a complete closed ecosystem. It won't be perfect. There will be losses. You'll have to replenish water. You have to come with starter food. But to get that ecosystem going, you essentially start with water, plankton, add tilapia. Tilapia eats plankton. Tilapia eats any invertebrates that you end up in the water, or invertebrates are good in general. Throw in some snails. They'll reproduce madly. That's what snails do. Then set up a vertical water system that has all of the fish poopy water flowing over the roots of plants. And now you can start growing vegetables. You eat the invertebrates, you eat the tilapia, you eat plants. And now you start producing your own waste, and your own waste can start going to, well, if you watched Mars, you know, you clean the dirt, you clean the dirt, you clean the dirt, you then add poop to the dirt. This is also going to be a very poopy episode, it turns out.
Right.
And
As
so this,
usual.
the whole goal is to build an expanding ecosystem that produces food, produces oxygen, and purifies water as it goes.
But this problem, solving this challenge, is going to be the same wherever we go across the whole solar system.
Yes.
You know, you and I are both quite partial to the idea of O'Neill cylinders and hollowing out metal asteroids and spinning them up and living on the inside of those. But it's going to be the same challenge, which is that you need water, you need tilapia, you need phytoplankton, and you just need to keep building up your ecosystem to larger and larger animals, depending on how much sunlight you're able to do. So the good news is you do have gravity on Mars that you can use to keep your water down and
Yes.
have your plants grow up. And chances are that should work okay in the Martian gravity.
And the crazy thing is we can't actually just use sunlight. You have to actually. Now here's where the next challenge comes. So I start with don't starve, probably because it's a good place to starve, and it's US Thanksgiving, so there's a turkey cooking in the crock pot in the background making me think of food.
Yeah, someone was mentioning in the chat, Thanksgiving tilapia.
We don't do tilapia in this house after an unfortunate tilapia incident that shall not be spoken of. But it's one of these things. So you figure out the food, you're not going to starve. But then there's this whole electricity thing going on that you need. And you figure you start with a good radiothermal generator, something powered through nuclear isotopes, going through half-lives, generating heat, powering your power source. That gets you started, and you get grow lights growing, but that's not a scalable system unless you happen to like start mining radioisotopes on Mars, which that's a whole lot of effort. So now you start putting out solar panels. Now the sunlight on Mars is different than the sunlight on Earth, and that whole radiation thing isn't going to be stopped by the roof of a greenhouse. So you actually need grow lights. We are looking to learn from every pot grower who ever grew pot in their mama's basement.
Right.
They have the skills.
Marijuana growers, you are the future of staying alive in space.
And so you start your solar farm outside. You start your veg and tilapia and plankton and invertebrate farm on the inside. And the problem is you now need an inside that doesn't kill you due to radiation. So, I mean, it's kind of, we didn't do an episode on how you get to Mars because there's a lot of problems so totally not solved that would be a whole lot of speculative fiction going on.
Well, next week we're talking about getting back from Mars. Maybe we'll include getting
Right.
to Mars. We'll talk about getting to and from Mars.
So the problem that I'm just going to assume somebody has solved is how to build that habitat you lived in to get to Mars so that it's radiation proof. So you start out in this hab, but it's probably small because it didn't want to weigh that much if you were trying to use energy, use fuel to get it all the way to Mars. Now, you want to expand beyond your initial food source. You want to expand beyond your initial safe habitat. And now you have to become the mole men of Mars because it turns out dirt is really good at protecting you from radiation. So that whole living in the basement idea, it's more like living in a cave, living in a lava tube, living underground with that dirt protecting you from radiation. And here the cool idea comes where we know there's a lot of subsurface ice on Mars. So maybe you dig yourself a nice hole, extract the water from the soil, and then blow up an inflatable habitat inside. And now you have a nice, friendly walled, not dirt walled containment vessel for you, your tilapia, your plants, and your electronics, and hopefully a few other humans.
Right. So Martian, they're going to be tilapia farmers, and they're going to be, as you say, molemen. They're going to be digging into the ground. They're going to be taking the Martian regolith. They're going to be turning it into concrete. They're going to be building interesting and more exotic buildings, and they're going to be digging down. Ideally, if there are lava tubes, they're going to be able to use those lava tubes as a way to kind of get a head start, less excavation required. But they're going to want a lot of excavation machinery, backhoes, things like that to be able to move around on the surface of Mars and just, push it all around. Minecraft that place.
And this is where you really have to send a whole lot of stuff ahead of time to the Martian surface. You need to go land, well, your fleet of robotic backhoes, essentially. So take Curiosity and give that thing a much bigger claw and let it start digging holes big enough for itself. Ideally, what you actually need is one of those like spinny, chompy things that looks like a worm from Dune that they use to build the channel and other giant underground tunnels around the world. But we have to land those successfully, get the process started remotely, and then have the humans follow behind.
It's interesting in some of the follow-up questions, like when Elon Musk was announcing his plans to send the Mars transportation system, to send the BFR to Mars and send groups of 100 colonists at a time, eventually hundreds of thousands every Mars window. He figured once Mars gets to about 1 million people, it should be a self-sustained, self-contained habitat that's completely separate from planet Earth, that it doesn't need Earth anymore. But until then, what are the Martians going to need from Earth?
This is where we're not sure how well that food ecosystem, will it be completely self-contained? Are we going to have to worry about, well, that plankton doesn't do so well under the artificial sunlight, or we don't have enough plankton growing to support the invertebrates and to support the tilapia? Do we need fish food delivered on a regular basis, essentially? Can we, in a successful manner, have enough solar panels, or do we need regular reinforcements of solar panels and the batteries that hold the charge? These are still technologies that we're working on. Anyone who's had an iPhone they refuse to replace, or an Android they refuse to replace, know that eventually you hit the point where your phone is just like, dude, I'm not going to hold my charge any longer, replace me. And it's that battery issue that we are going to have to worry about. We're still learning what's the maximum lifespan that a solar panel works at a high enough operational level. And then there's tech. They're not going to have circuit boards getting built. They're not going to have all the manufacturing going on. Where is cloth going to come from? There's a lot of people that talk about the next step past tilapia for protein that isn't a veg is goats, because goats produce fur, goats produce milk, goats, you can eat them. So goat is kind of the perfect critter, other than being very smart and very grumpy. But how long does it take to get to the point that you have the cloth, you have the manufacturing, you have all the things that we totally take for granted? Just the fact that I'm sitting at a wooden desk. How do you're clearly going to be 3D printing the bejesus out of everything.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing,
3D
right?
printer.
Earth is still ideally going to still be here. If the worst case scenario hasn't happened and Earth is still a place, then the discoveries that get made on Earth, the plans can be sent to Mars and they can 3D print them. So in theory, if the manufacturing gets good enough, the iPhone 12 gets released on Earth and the specs are sent to Mars and they 3D print their version of the iPhone 12 and they've got iPhone 12s as well. But as you said, circuit boards, like the 3D printing, which is currently just kind of a hobby, the future really will depend and rely on us being able to be able to manufacture things remotely this way. And then, and the same thing as well is that whatever we're missing, we can put in cargo ships and send them to Mars. You know, it only takes a couple of years. And so if they'll build a big shopping list, like we need more goats, we need more whatever, and every 2 years another shipment will come and will replenish, and they'll learn over time the things that they're missing to be able to be a lot more self-sustaining. But there's
And it's really only 6 months to get there. So you can imagine setting up a system where you have this set of constantly moving vehicles that you dock with and undock with, going again back to the movie The Martian, where you don't have the power loss of matching speeds with Mars. You don't have the power loss of matching speeds with Earth. You just have this ship that you dock and undock, fill it up at Earth, empty it out at Mars, and keep doing the circuit every 6 months.
We've talked about ways to mitigate everything, but there's really one problem that is going to be really difficult that we can't resupply, which is this low gravity. So what if it turns out that 38% gravity is lethal to human beings over long periods of time? What can we do about that?
So this is where I'm going to go back to one of my favorite sci-fi authors, Kim Stanley Robinson. And in one of his more recent books, he put forth the idea that every couple of years, the human beings have to come back to Earth for a period of time to let their body get back to equilibrium. And that without that constant return to Earth, it may just be that human beings can't quite make it. And there's stopgap measures. There's the idea of sleeping in essentially whirling compartments where you can imagine everyone lined up along the walls at essentially a carnival ride, getting spun up, sleeping like that, and then it spins back down when it's time to get up.
One idea on PBS Spacetime, they were talking about this a couple of months ago, about having some kind of huge train that just goes around and around and around, and the train is at a bit of an angle, and so you take the centripetal force that you're going to feel from the train, or is it centrifugal? It's the centrifugal force that you get with the train, and then you match that with the partial gravity from Mars to equal out to 100. So you're going to be on this sort of curved track and just going to go around and around. But just imagine the scale of engineering of that. The irony is that space, just a few hundred kilometers above your head in some kind of orbital facility like Phobos or whatever, if it's turning and is able to generate that artificial gravity, that's going to be a place you could replenish. So you could come back to Earth, as you said, or maybe you go up to Phobos, spend a year or a month or whatever in the full gravity of the rotating Phobos,
but again, spinning up something that is a rubble pile may be a bad idea.
The 16
just build a space station. Just build a space station.
16 Psyche, the metallic asteroid that's in the asteroid belt. You move that so that it's going around Mars, and then that becomes a place that you can go and rest and recuperate. But that's the part that's, if we can't solve this problem, it's going to make living on Mars really, really difficult. And there's no way to fix the lack of gravity on Mars.
And we really don't know if this is the kind of thing that has some weird alternative biochemical solution where we're going to find ourselves using CRISPR to edit our genes to add in things that change how we process, lose, and replenish calcium. We don't know if there's some magical hormone combination that's going to be discovered. The solutions to these kinds of things could take any form. And here is where occasionally you're waiting for that next genius to have that breathtaking idea that changes the paradigm. And it may be that slow incremental advancement isn't going to get there, and we need a giant paradigm shift.
Yeah, and there was a great book. Oh, I don't even remember who did it. Maybe it was an Asimov story, but anyway, it was this idea that, and I'm sure someone in the chat will remember it, that, as you said, that we don't try to change Mars. We change ourselves. When we meet Mars halfway, that
Yeah.
that we can, as you say, really genetically engineer a different race of human beings and life that is equipped to deal in that kind of lower gravity. And you can imagine this far future where we are genetically different from the other kinds of humans that are around in the solar system. That there are the people who live on Earth, there's the people who live in space, there's the people who live on different worlds depending on their gravity, and they have different genetic structure adapted for that environment.
And you can imagine as a starting point, again, stealing ruthlessly from Kim Stanley Robinson, everyone needs to go read everything he has ever written. Um, he puts forward the idea that perhaps you start by finding lichen adjusted to extraordinarily high altitudes and see if you can adjust it to living on Mars. Now, here we're sort of admitting to the idea of completely destroying all potential microbial or other life on Mars, but life adapts, life finds a way. And it is potential that life as we know it would die horribly on the surface of Mars. But perhaps we can get to having life as we don't currently know it that's perfectly happy to be radiated.
Yeah, if I understand the lichens that come from Antarctica and such, they would still die and suffer horribly on the surface of Mars, but it's not that far. They wouldn't require a ton of modifications to be able to handle the drier habitat, as long as you give them water. But you could handle that drier habitat and be able to survive on Mars. So we actually could be very close to be able to make this happen.
It's just that whole life is we aren't alive currently that is always the sticking point because each of us want to do it rather than imagining the edited humans that might do it in the future.
Or, of course, if we end up merging with our robots, then they don't care. So in that, when we join with our robots, then our robot bodies will be able to survive out on the surface of Mars, no problem. Which is just another reason to, merge with our robots.
And now I want to go watch Battlestar Galactica again.
Right. All right. Well, thanks, Pamela. Next week, we're going to talk about getting from and maybe to Mars.
Sounds great, Fraser.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Stop the recording.
And now we save. Welcome to the most boring part of the show.
The most important part, though.
Yes. Someone wrote in the chat, send the tardigrades. We probably already have.
Yeah.
Probably already have.
Yeah, they're already on Mars right now. Taking over that place like boss.
Our little IAPA bosses.
Okay. Save. There's another comment there. Okay, so from Susan Hunter, how far can goats jump on Mars? So I did. So hold on. So I did the math. 38% gravity is 260%. Right. So in other words, if you can jump 1 meter, then you can jump 2.6 meters. So now I'm just going to do a quick Google search here. How high can goats jump?
Goats can jump ludicrous amounts. And all of you out there watching him Google, there is a fabulous video out there somewhere of goats that are given a set of flexible metal and they're like bouncing on it like a trampoline.
Yeah, I gave my wife her birthday present and I'm like, I got your birthday present. She's like, oh, is it a baby goat? No, it's just a pair of headphones. But yeah, so she really wants to have goats. And I see Phil Plates just really enjoying his goat population. They're so great. Half of his Instagram feed is just his goats playing around, which is just hilarious. They sound like they're a lot of fun. Okay, so let's say that a goat can jump 4 feet. So a goat could jump 10, 12 feet on Mars. Yeah. Although
and I suspect that's an underestimate.
Yeah, probably is. Here, we have to build our fences about 8 feet tall to stop the deer from jumping over them. So
We have the same issue.
yeah. So once again, you could imagine deer jumping 20 feet in the air. Um, let's see. From Empire Hexmac, how much artificial intelligence will help us to live on Mars?
It will be our sanity. It because you figure there's so much in terms of. So I'm going to put this mathematically because I don't know how to put it any other way. So if you have two people, there's one set of connections between them. If you have three people, you now have essentially three exponent connections between them. If you look at all of the recombinant ways that things can go. So that's 1 times 2 times 3. Now, the more people you add in, the more possible relationships you can have. And then you have cliques forming. And at the end of the day, you're going to just want to go back to your room and go, Siri, Alexa, Cantana, whoever it is, Google.
Yeah.
And just like out of Mr. Robot, where you watch the woman talking to Alexa and building a relationship, I'm sure people will be building relationships with their AIs just to stay sane.
But a lot of the AIs are going to be super important because a lot of the methodologies that we're going to have to do to gather supplies are going to be in places that are totally hostile, right? So you're going to have a robotic bulldozer, robotic backhoes that's just out there digging, moving dirt around, making decisions. And so from that perspective, having some kind of AI that is assisting and very intelligently building and gathering the supplies in places that would kill human beings is going to be super important. So I think, you know, the level of intelligence of our robotics that we have assisting us is going to be key.
And I think some of those will be dumb. Like the robot that dug the tunnel, I think we can all agree was a fairly dumb robot. But yeah, all gradients of robot intelligence shall be required.
So from Ren and C about gravity on Mars, is it not just a question of adding weight to similar what would be on Earth, clothes with weights distributed? So could you wear weights in your clothes?
So where you get into problems is the momentum of an object, the inertia of an object is tied to how much mass it has. And so you're going to have to deal with increased momentum, increased inertia if you put people in weighted suits in ways that could potentially be really bad for human joints. Just the whole stopping part, bad for human joints. So you have to try and find solutions that won't wear out the joints and allows resistance in a reasonable. So exercising against elastic resistant bands is something they do on the ISS. But walking around in weighted suits, you can imagine you come to a jolted stop and you hurt all kinds of things.
Yeah, and but I think that it can help because like in the space station it is weightlessness or microgravity, so they are not, you couldn't wear any amount of extra weights. But if you were on Mars, then you could wear weighted clothing and it would help with some of the things like the strength of your bones, perhaps the ability of your muscles to carry things. But there's other stuff like your cardiovascular system, the Ryo-san is saying, you know, doesn't add to the weight of our organs. Like there are things inside your body, you know, the astronauts are suffering from heart disease problems with their eyeballs.
The eyeball one's weird.
Yeah, problems with their brains. There are repercussions of being in lower gravity for long periods of time that we just don't understand yet. And really, I personally think it's dangerously unwise to try to live on Mars until we've sorted this out. And I think that's why we need to go the artificial gravity rotating cylinders or some kind of rotating thing. Like send goats, rats, cats, whatever it takes into space, put them on a little rat space station, and find out what that low gravity, 38% gravity is going to do to the body over a few years'
Generations.
time, over generations, right? We don't know. And to, I think to try and send humans to Mars and have them try to live there within the next 10 years, it's just not enough time for us to just get to the bottom of this very important question. If it turns out that kind of gravity's fine, then all bets are off. Let's get cranking. But if it turns out that it's it's going to cause tremendous damage and is lethal, then we got to come up with a whole other solution. It completely changes the way we try to live on Mars.
So Larry Beckham just went pigs in space, and yeah, human beings and pigs are shockingly not that different when you look at our organs. This is where pig heart valve transplants are a thing, and folks have talked about genetically re-engineering pigs so that we can steal organs from them, not just heart valves. And it's a possibility, and that would be some really expensive bacon.
Todd Howard asks, are the various space agencies not developing some kind of resistant spacesuits to counter the lack of gravity? No, they're building a resistant spacesuit to counteract the low pressure, but not the low gravity. So one of the really kind of amazing things about a resistance suit is if the temperature's fine, you don't need to have a pressure suit around you. You can have this amazing resistance suit, which will work really well, but it won't help you with the gravity problem.
Yeah.
From Ronnie Person, is it ethical to invade a planet that possibly has life on it with which we risk wiping out?
Not really. This is where further research also needs to be done on whether or not there is life on Mars. And one of the things that came up in the episode on Phobos and Deimos that we recorded is the possibility of starting out by sticking humans on Phobos and basically invading Mars with all the robots, all of them. Go down, look in the tunnels, go look everywhere, and do every possible test to look for life as we do and don't know it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we're about to get that answer thanks to the ExoMars spacecraft, and it's going to be sniffing the methane in the atmosphere of Mars, and if it finds that the methane is related to volcanism, then we can kind of rule out that source of, or that life signal. But if it turns out that it is life, then what do, right? We don't know where it is, but we know that it's there and it's farting.
Yes, and then we go find it with little tiny robots that swarm the world in search of life forms.
Yeah, and
I'm a fan of small swarming robots.
And potentially infect the world with our life clinging to those things. But
we need to learn how to sterilize our small swarming robots.
But that is the question, right? Which is it ethical to colonize, to essentially destroy the biosphere of a world, both in terms of just like we lose all the scientific understanding and we potentially destroy the biosphere? Is it ethical?
No.
No. Are we going to do it?
Probably.
Yes. Right? We're just going to do it. It's going to be the wrong thing to do, and we're going to be glad to do it because that's what human beings do.
Yes.
I've
got no response to that other than go humans.
Yeah, we will. But again, back to that sort of idea of like space. Space doesn't care. Lagrange points, asteroids rotating, forget it. There's no problem. There's no ethical dilemma. Right? Let's take 100 years to explore Mars carefully. Let's take 100 years to explore Enceladus and Europa carefully before we pollute them with our life.
Yeah. There's lots of places you can stick humans that are known to be thoroughly, totally, and completely dead.
Yeah.
Let's stick humans in dead places.
Yeah.
Let them live there.
Where they belong.
Yes.
Okay.
We need a cheerful question. I demand a cheerful question.
Do you really?
I do.
Joe Lynn says, ironic. We fear an alien invasion, but it turns out that we are the ones that will invade. Yep. It was us all along. Of course, back to the robot thing. We merged with our robot bodies they're clean of microbial life, they go on to Mars and live happily and completely separate from the biological systems. Then it's all fine again.
And I don't think we're that far from being able to use VR headsets to have a fully immersive robotic experience, which is a little creepy and disgusting,
Yeah.
but also there's no yuck factor in what we would do to the surface of Mars.
Yep. Yep. Um,
Can I just keep saying pigs in
Pigs in
space?
space. What do the sunsets on Mars look like? Asks
Oh,
Valdi
they're
guest.
gorgeous
Yeah.
blue.
Yeah.
I actually my iPad backdrop is a Mars
Oh,
sunset.
really? Okay, let me.
Yeah.
I will find one and I will put it up for the viewers.
I just there was an amazing picture with the moon setting, not moon, with the sun setting with a whole bunch of hills in the background and it's slightly dusty and it's
And I've
just
got the picture. Here it is.
gorgeous.
All right, let me. Oh, it's an animated GIF. Okay, here, check this out. Okay, everyone can see this. So this is Mars, and so it's an animated GIF of the sun setting over the horizon, over some mountains on Mars. And as you see, it's blue. Hey, Pamela, why is it blue?
Because the atmosphere is so thin that the amount of scattering that we get with the sun at zenith, they get with the sun at the horizon, and they never end up with a red sky because there's just not enough atmosphere to scatter that much color out of the light.
So cool.
So Larry Beckham keeps going on about the Muppet Show, and I'm going to relate something thoroughly silly. Um, I was a foreign exchange student when I was in high school to what was then the Soviet Union, working at the 6 meter telescope in the Caucasus Mountains because I was a crazy small genius child, apparently. Um, but there was one day I was coming home and I walk in the front door of our flat and I hear coming from the living room, Shvina va Cosmosia. And it was one of these things of, what? Okay, I understood all those words. Really? And it turns out that Johnson and Johnson, for a while in the 80s and 90s, would translate a variety of US children's shows and random adult shows, which completely confused me because it was like 90210 and Dallas, things that really don't export that part of US culture. But I could come home and sit down with my younger host sister and watch Muppets and all of these Disney cartoons involving the whichever was the rich of the ducks, and it was all sponsored by Johnson and Johnson.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no connection to that from my childhood.
Okay,
I have never, but then, I grew up in Canada, and so, we had all
you
kinds of
didn't have
things.
DuckTales?
Maybe. Yeah, no, we had DuckTales. I never watched it, though.
I watched it in Russian.
All right, so David Joseph Wesley gives you the cheery question, which is what will we eat for Mars Thanksgiving? But I think we've already learned that.
Mars Thanksgiving is definitely involving potatoes and tilapia.
Yeah, potatoes, tilapia, and some kind of phytoplankton. Maybe goat.
I think phytoplankton would be a bad idea because it's slightly toxic.
Okay.
Shrimp.
Shrimp. Yeah. Yeah.
There's
So
freshwater shrimp to
like
go with our freshwater tilapia.
a shrimp paste on your tilapia. Sounds good. Let's see. So Renancy is asking, could humans reproduce safely in low gravity? Any research on this? Animal testing, development of microgravity embryos? We don't know. Have there been any microgravity experiments for... Yes.
There were some mice ones. I don't remember if they let the baby mice be born.
Hold on. NASA, effect of space environment on mammalian reproduction. Experiment was called Space Pup. They took some freeze. Oh, see, so they took some freeze dried mouse sperm aboard the International Space Station, and then fertilized mouse eggs, and then they produced mouse pups. But I don't know if they produced them in space or they just brought them back to Earth and then produced them.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, maybe this hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, because this is a
Will be launched.
November 2. Okay,
Yeah,
so it
yeah,
hasn't
yeah.
happened yet.
Yeah, and this is
Okay.
actually a decadal. This is in the decadal survey. So no. So that is a future hoped for mission. In fact, we should do a
There's
story
a
on this.
mouse drawer system designed for the International Space Station. Mice Drawer System is an Italian Space Agency experiment that will use a validated mouse model to investigate the genetic mechanisms underlying bone mass loss and other microgravity effects.
So we are still in the early stages of this. I think, yeah, we really have to add some kind of rotating portion to the International Space Station or a completely separate space station. Like that, I've decided our next priority in human spaceflight is to build some kind of artificial gravity space station.
Yeah.
And it could be attached to the International Space Station. Just build a part that comes off of it that then is above it or below it or whatever, and is rotating separately.
I'm so frustrated with how long it is taking to space test the Bigelow inflatables, because we've been talking about this for the whole 10 years we've been recording.
Yeah.
And they've gotten to the point that they've put the Bigelow inflatables on the ISS. They're just not letting the humans play yet.
Yep.
That would be so simple to string a bunch of those together and get our nice, friendly, giant space station.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, a lot of people are very frustrated by the International Space Station, but I personally feel like it's, you're 99% of the way there. You've got the space station in space. Human beings are going up there and they're living, but they're not pushing the limits fast enough or, to really understand what's next. I mean, there was having the astronauts spend the amount of time they just did was great.
And they are finally doing science, and they're launching the CanSats, and they have the racks for small experiments. So science is finally at very small levels, but finally happening. So I'm less grouchy than I used to be. But yeah.
Can fish orient themselves in microgravity? How did they react? Yes.
They do it by light. They orient. So they've had zebra danios, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Up, and they orient according to the light and one another.
Ronnie Pearson wants to know: has anybody had sex in space yet? Not that we're aware of.
Yeah. So depending on who you talk to, I've heard that the early Russian women that were sent up into space were actually part of a booty call, but it's unconfirmed.
Yeah.
And what happens between consenting men and women on the ISS is between consenting men and women.
What happens on ISS stays on the ISS. Valdegast wants to know: will we do an episode on living in the Venusian atmosphere?
No.
Okay. We can do the short version of it right now, which is
short version is you're on a balloon in a capsule hoping not to die.
Yeah. That if you're about 52 kilometers altitude on Venus, the temperature and pressure are Earth normal, but the clouds are made of sulfuric acid and the atmosphere is made of carbon dioxide. So you could walk outside your space habitat or your floating balloon, stand out on the railing of your cloud city and look out as the sulfuric acid eats away at your spacesuit. But you won't have to wear a coat, and you would have to wear a coat because actually it's a little chilly. But you couldn't breathe, so you'd have to have some kind of breathing system. But the air pressure is fine. The great part is that the breathable air is a lifting gas on Venus, so your habitat would float. You would live in the what is causing you lifting gas, which is very efficient. You could live inside your balloon, which I think is great.
But still, death.
Klondike Nation, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, how awesome does everyone think Fraser's beard is? So some say 10, but it's got these patches. right? See, I got this patch here.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
and I have this patch here. So it's not a great beard. It's not as good as it could be. But I am not allowed to shave it off ever again. My wife is just, she's decided that's it. The
You're
beard
turning
remains.
into a neck beard.
Yeah, well, that's just me, not shaving. It depends on how formal, if I'm going to have my formal beard or my informal beard. David Joseph Lee notes that living in the clouds of Venus would suck because your friend Lando would betray you. Of course, as always. Yes.
Okay.
Did you hear who got the spoiler alert?
Oh yeah.
Did you hear who got the
Role of young
role
Lando.
of Lando? It's oh my god, what's his name? Charles
Daniel
Gambino.
Glover?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Daniel Glover, which is awesome.
yes.
He apparently wanted to be Spider-Man, which I think is great.
That would have been awesome too.
Yeah. But Donald Glover is the greatest. Have you seen Atlanta yet?
Seen what?
Atlanta, his TV show Atlanta?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
That's quite
good. Yeah.
And what I love is we finally live in an age where the people producing the media have realized that nerds have money to spend on media. So we're getting media that's almost good.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the Marvel franchise, 14 movies, is the most successful movie franchise that's ever been made.
Well, and the shows they're putting out on Netflix, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Daredevil, they're dark, they're gritty, they're well written.
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm really, really pleased. Although I have this argument with my friends every now and then, which is that like, are you excited about Rogue One? Is that what it's called? The new Star Wars movie? And I'm like, I'm not that excited because, I've been burned so many times by trailers and by future movies. Like, oh my God, this movie's going to be so great. And then it comes out and it's like, meh. So my feeling is that if a movie's good, then it's good. And if it's bad, then it's bad. That's, I don't get excited about future movies because I've had my heart broken so many times.
That's like me and considering spaceships dead to me until they're successfully like returning data.
That's exactly it. Are you excited about Suicide Squad? No. And then it turns out, because maybe in my heart I am a little bit. And then it comes out and I'm like, oh, it was no good. That's too bad. So that is now the way I treat all this stuff. But my other feeling is that I'm a little sad by the way the money gets siphoned away from other projects, right? Like, where's my Foundation TV series? Where's, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of really great science fiction, fantasy, really interesting series that authors have done a tremendous amount of work to create a really tight, well-conceived world. The Martian's a great example, right? The Martian was just a wonderful book, and it got turned into a really great movie because it was just followed, right? Game of Thrones, it's been followed. Walking Dead, it is following the comic book. So that's my only concern, is that when you have too many big sequels, it just sucks away money from what could be really interesting TV shows and series.
And this is what I'm appreciating about how Netflix is doing the Marvel series, is they're treating them in a way like self-contained story arcs.
Yeah.
So here we have this miniseries, here we have this, except it's like 13 episodes, and so you get much more richness.
Okay, well, I think we're reaching the end of the time. Someone wanted to know about Westworld. Westworld is great.
I haven't watched that.
Oh, it's fantastic, and it's a great example of them, I guess, remaking something. It was really thin on content anyway, and the new one is great. I'm really enjoying it. It's sort of like the best TV show about the worst video game ever. So, like, when you actually think about the video game, and, like, as a software designer, we have to think about, like, what would make for a good game. It would be a terrible game. There's so complicated, to try and reset the game and make it all work and make it all hang together. But the show is fantastic, so I really enjoy it. All right, let's wrap this up. So once again, thanks to everyone for joining us this week. Thanks to Pamela for bringing the brain. Thanks for both everyone in the YouTube chat and in the Slack chat. If you want to join the Slack chat, that's this one here. go to wsh-crew.net, and there's instructions on how you can actually join the chat. And this is, of course, the producers behind the Weekly Space Hangout. And they're a wonderful community, and you should absolutely join them and be part of that community. You'll get all kinds of notifications when things are happening. We kind of talk to, we release a lot of information early on to this group. So you should definitely, if you're really fans of Astronomy Cast and Space Hangout, you should definitely join them.
Yeah.
And the other thing I don't think I mentioned, which was I just wrapped up a 2-part very special episode of The Guide to Space with Isaac Arthur. We did 2 episodes on colonizing the solar system. So I tackled the inner solar system, Isaac tackled the outer solar system, and both episodes are gigantic. So it was like 20 plus minutes each, and it's almost like we made a television show between the two of us. So you should definitely go and check that out. The first one's on my channel, second one's on his channel. It's awesome. All right, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks Pamela, thanks fans. We'll see you all tomorrow at the same bat time, same bat channel. Bye.
Bye-bye.